Welcome to the Awesome Marriage Podcast, a place for honest conversations and practical advice on how to build an awesome marriage. I am your podcast producer and co-host, Lindsay Few. On the show will be our host, Dr. Kim Kimberlin. Dr. Kim is a marriage counselor and has been married for over 50 years. His passion is to help you strengthen your most intimate relationship.
Well, Andy and Sara, thank you so much for agreeing to be here and kind of share your story. Love you guys. Thanks for saying yes to this.
Of course. We're glad to be here.
Somewhat excited to be here.
Serious though, right? So before we kind of get into the meat of the things we talk about how you guys met, where you are with kids, all that kind of stuff, those early years.
Yeah, so we both went to Oklahoma State, but we didn't know each other. She was a good student. I was a B.C. student. She was always studying. I wasn't. We met at the Final Four in San Antonio. I had been out of school for a couple of years. We were at a bar called Mad Dogs on the river. Sara walks in with a group of friends. I was there with some buddies. Some of our friends knew each other. And she walked in, and I was like, oh, my goodness. I'm going to marry that girl. I mean, true story. Like, like the sun was behind her. I mean, it was like,
and angels were singing. Right?
I walked up to her and bought her a beer. She doesn't drink beer at all, but I think she drank that one. I think that's the one beer she's drank. And we were married 9 months later.
8 months.
8 months later. I mean, just talked every day for 3 or 4 hours and yeah.
So what did you think of him during that time? This guy that...
I was immediately interested in him because he did not talk like typical pickup line talk. He wanted to talk about his family and his nieces and nephews, and he was always asking really good questions to me and then hanging on the edge of his seat as I answered my long-winded questions about myself. And so he was just genuinely interested in who I was as a person. And that was like my initial first take of him. And he had beautiful eyes. And I always remembered that.
Keep going.
Yeah. What did your family think about? That's a pretty short dating, engagement, marriage season.
So Andy, I had dated and I was kind of done with the like short term, waste your time, waste your money, waste your heart. And I knew I didn't want to waste time unless I was ready to get married. And so I told him kind of as a joke, but also as a test, hey, if you want to date me, you need to go talk to my dad. And I was 22 and he was 24. And it was just kind of like, okay, let's see how serious you are. And he drove to Veneta, Oklahoma. My dad was a veterinarian there and showed up at his office, asked if he could talk to him. And my dad took him into his office and had a serious heart-to-heart with him. And he asked if he could date me. And I was immediately, okay, he's serious. This isn't like just like something that's hot and cold or going to be short-lived. He's really serious. Okay, I'll give this a chance.
Yeah.
My family loved her. My grandpa and I were best buds, and I'll never forget the first time he met her. He kind of pulls me aside and he's like, "Hey, boy, you better marry that girl." I was like, "Don't worry, I'm working on it."
I'm on that track, right?
Yeah, my family was super supportive.
That's cool. How long were you married until you had kids then?
5 years.
Okay. How was that first 5 years?
The first 2 years were really hard. Because we didn't have a very long dating period, we knew the important things. I knew he was a Christian. I knew he wanted to live in Oklahoma. I knew he wanted to have kids. We both knew extended family was important to us. So we knew the important things were similar. But after that, we didn't know a lot about each other.
Yeah.
And so I think because we didn't date for a super long period of time, those first 2 years were hard. I had my plans, I was going to medical school. I wanted to do surgery or dermatology or something that was going to require a lot of work. And I felt like he was joining me in my journey. And so those first 2 years, I had to really learn to die to self. And I had to learn it always reminds me of that verse. Jesus came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom. And I had to learn very quickly that I was very selfish, and I had to learn what it looked like giving some of that up and maybe changing some of my career ambitions, not because he asked me to, but because if I didn't, there was no going to be any time for him.
Yeah.
I was the chair of my fraternity. I was the social chairman. I had 6 roommates after college. I mean, I was an extroverted extrovert. And I moved from Oklahoma City, where I was surrounded by 30 best friends, to Tulsa, where I knew very few people. And she would wake up at 5:30 in the morning, and she would study until 10:30 at night. And I was by myself.
Wow.
Like, what in the world did I sign up for? And I think getting to know each other. I had a Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition and a Maxim magazine in my drawer, and thought, this is fine. And I'll never forget, she found it a couple months in and was like, basically, this is an affair. And I had to get super serious about, this isn't okay. These are things about me that, I think you live in the shadows a touch. Yep. And things that you knew weren't okay, but when you're married to somebody and they start to know who you really are, and having to get serious about killing, to Sarah's side, to Sarah's comment, like killing selfish, unhealthy habits that I had, it was difficult. The first 2 years were hard as we kind of grappled with, both of us kind of having expectations that weren't being met. Mm-hmm.
Did it cause conflict?
Oh, for sure. Yes.
Yeah, but not like now conflict. It was conflict, but it was just like we just didn't like each other very much.
Yeah.
And I remember my grandpa, they thought was dying. And again, he was like one of my best friends. And I told Sarah, I was like, hey, Dad called, Grandpa's not going to make it. We need to go down and say goodbye. And she was like, no, I've got a test this weekend. Or next week, I got to stay here and study. And I drove down by myself and was real upset. And we went to Costa Rica for our anniversary. I don't remember exactly why we went. A week or two later, and I remember telling her, like, dude, that wasn't cool. Why didn't you come with me? And to Sarah's credit, we had that trip, I felt like saved our marriage. And I just told her, I said, I don't care if you're a neurosurgeon. I want you to be my buddy. I want you to be available. And she went from being like top 5 in her medical class to, she was still probably top 20, but she became much more balanced and much more, she was at home, and she would turn it off at 5 and really started prioritizing us. And that
made a difference.
Mm-hmm. And we just enjoyed each other more. We really loved to travel together, and we spent probably years 2 to 5 of marriage just enjoying each other and doing a lot of traveling, knowing we wanted to have kids. We're like, well, I think our lives will shut down when we have kids, so we should see the world before then.
Yeah. So you did.
So we did a lot of traveling.
So how did it change then when you started having, you have 3 kids that are how old now?
Isabella, she goes by Belle, she'll be 14 next month, and Elizabeth's 11, and Andrew's 9.
Okay. So how did life change when Belle was born, since she's the first?
I think it made me fall in love with Andy all over again, because I was in residency. We decided to have both our girls in residency just to complicate things. And he was so supportive, and I think he had seen the sacrifice I had made with choosing, a career path that was less demanding, a specialty that was less demanding. And he was so excited to have Belle because he had this built-in buddy, and he would take her to Lowe's on Saturday, and he just loved her so much. And so seeing what a great dad he was, I had this whole another level of love for him at this point. And I'll never forget, I was adamant I was going to nurse and breastfeed 12 months. And so he would, on my nights on call, he would stay in a hotel room with baby Belle and the dog with her screaming at 3 a.m. and me calling him saying, let me finish admitting this patient and then go deliver a baby and then I'll come nurse her. Don't give her the breast milk.
Wow.
He was just a great, great dad. And it was a really, really busy, exhausting time, but it was so delightful.
It was good.
Having the kids. Yes.
Yeah. Then after you graduated from med school and did your residency, you guys moved back to Oklahoma City?
We moved before I finished medical school. I finished my final 2 years of medical school here. So we lived in Edmond. I finished residency. I started working for Mercy. And then he debated moving to New York. He got a big job offer in New York, and we were trying to decide if we wanted to do that. And he decided instead we would move to Oklahoma City. We would just become more urban. And so I decided to stay home at that point and we did blended homeschool with the kids. It was a wonderful season. I wanted to do the blended homeschool to try to kind of make up for lost time and have more time with the kids that I felt like I lost when I was working in residency all the time. And he could bike to the office when the weather was nice, and we had this beautiful community downtown, and it was really, really special time.
Yeah, that's really good. Anything else about early years?
No, I think we had great community, good friends, had good accountability partners, and it started to, I'd say that we started to have cracks in our marriage. What was that, 5 years ago?
It was like year 15, probably, of marriage. Like year 5 to 15 felt like, well, maybe even year 2 to 15. I mean, we would have bumps in the road, but... Great
season.
Yeah. But nothing that was just...
Yeah.
No. It was just, you'd look at them back and say, those are pretty normal that couples will go through.
That's right.
It was about 4 years ago. I was having I had great accountability. The pastor of my church, some of my best friends, and then there was some fallout within our community that lost some of that accountability, lost some of that. We ended up leaving our church, and it's hard to talk through all this. I started having a lot of success in my work world. Just a lot of success on a bunch of fronts. Buying properties kind of all over the country and just doing fun things and neat projects, and started getting a lot of attention and a lot of people telling me, man, you're pretty great. Yeah. And, just a lot of that kind of stuff. And I lost my accountability partners. We were kind of without a church home. And I started pursuing a life of fun. Mm. And what that looked like for me, it wasn't drugs, it wasn't alcohol, it was sand volleyball. I mean, truthfully, it was hanging out with friends. It was 5 nights a week. We would do dinner with buddies, with friends, their kids, our kids. We took 15 vacations a year, all of them with other people. And we lived this big, giant, amazing life. And the problem was I was getting wrapped more and more into my success and thinking I was this great gift to humanity. And honey, she started tapping the brakes pretty fast. Like, hey, this isn't a healthy rhythm. And we're moving too fast. We haven't had a family dinner in way too long. Why are we taking another trip with all these people? Like, we need to reprioritize. And I started basically like gaslighting. I still don't really know what that word means, but I think I'm pretty guilty of it. Like, hey, honey, smile and keep up. Everybody else thinks we're great. Come on. Yeah. And basically gaslighting her on, our life is great. Look around. Look at all the things we have. Look at all of our friends. Look at all these things that we're doing and creating and building. And this is a good life. You should be happy. Mm. You're not happy. That must be you. Yeah. And really started kind of pointing the finger at, if you're not happy, it's got to be you, because I know it's not me. And gaslighting her. I don't know that there's a better word. And the more I would lean into my position, the more she would lean into her position. And all of a sudden, we were in a pretty bad spot. And it happened fast.
Yeah, kind of bring us up, your part of it up to that point.
So Andy had hit the mountaintop career-wise. And I think in that process, we had tons of friends. Everyone wanted to hang out. Everyone wanted to go to dinner and go on trips. And he's so extroverted. He loved that. But the problem was we weren't having time, just he and we weren't having time with our kids. And, you know, I had felt some discernment that some of the relationships were unhealthy. So his priority for who he was spending time with was a lot of fun. You know, if whoever has the same goal of fun was who he wanted to spend the most time with. And it just became a very, very unhealthy community relationship as well. And I would just watch as he and I maybe went 9 months without a date, just the two of us. But yet we were together in these group settings all the time. And I felt like he didn't know me. I felt like he didn't know my heart. He didn't know what was going on with me. And we would go to these dinners and I would watch him like lean across the table and ask the others at the table, hey, how are you doing? How's your heart? How are you? And I was thinking, I wish he would ask me that. And that went on just for months. And I would talk to him about it, but he just wasn't in a place where he could hear me.
I wasn't approachable.
Yeah.
I think I was reading my own newspaper clippings and believing lies about myself. And, you know, in that season I was searching for the world to fill up that void in my chest that only God can fill. And kept trying to stuff it with like, if I build this project and I create this thing and I buy this hotel and I do this project, if I play more volleyball, if I go on this trip, and I can fill that void and she'll be happy and I'll be happy. And it just, you know, the faster I ran on the hamster wheel, the more I just went round and round. And we ended up in your office. I don't even know how we found Dr. Kim.
It's because I listened to the podcasts and I realized you were in Oklahoma City, and I think we waited like 6 months to come in and see you. And I've been praying, like, Lord, just bring us someone that can help us. And we waited 6 months.
Wow.
So during that time, I remember I would oscillate emotionally from this place of like, here, this person that I love and value and respect, and everyone else loves and values and respect, is saying these things about me. Like, you're not fun, you're anxious, these negative things. And I would oscillate between, wait, is this who I am? Do I need work? Am I like really this person? And then I would oscillate back to, wait, Christ says that I'm these things. And I would find myself falling into this anxiety when I would camp out over here and what Andy might be saying about me, instead of pressing into the Lord more. And so we hit this really rock bottom spot at some point. And that's when I just realized Andy cannot be where I get my validation. Andy cannot be who fills me up and defines who I am and gives me my identity. And I've grown up a Christian my whole life. I knew that in my head, but in my heart, I wasn't walking that out. Mm-hmm. And so the Lord just really put on my heart that I needed to start Sabbathing. I needed to start resting in Him, because as Andy was setting these standards for me of, here are the things I want you to do, here are the things I need you to do. In my own perfectionistic type A goal-oriented self, I had all these other standards for myself. So to try to meet all my standards and all His standards, I was just exhausting myself. Yeah. And the Lord just kept I just kept hearing this word Sabbath and hearing these books and these podcasts. And I just went to the Lord broken one day, took the kids to school on a Monday and just sat at Harvey Bakery and just wept with the Lord and just confessed, like, Lord, I have not sought you to fill me up in these ways. And I began to make that a rhythm. And over time, it was like I would go through these hard acknowledgments of what I really needed and acknowledging my own shortcomings, and God would just fill that, and God would meet me, and God would love me. And as I grew, Andy, I didn't see a lot of change in him during that process, but I knew the Lord was with me and growing me. And looking back, it wasn't any specific person that said something to Andy that all of a sudden like snapped him out of the season he was in, but it was truly just the Holy Spirit in his life prompting him and coming to him, and Andy getting to this fork in the road where he had to make a choice, like, okay, which life do I want? Do I want this life with all this fun, all this volleyball, everybody loves me? Or do I want to humble myself, broken and contrite at the foot of the cross, and love my family well and seek the Lord first? And he made the hard decision, and he took the path less traveled, and he has taken so much loss from that. He's lost, relationships that were upset that he didn't want to continue on that path. But the beauty of what we've gained, all that collateral damage, has obviously been more than worth it.
Yeah.
I think backing up just a touch, like we hit rock bottom in New York. New York
kind of set the stage for that.
It's funny how New York kind of keeps coming back. When we almost moved there, and then I bought a hotel in New York City after the pandemic, and it swallowed me. It exacerbated my feeling of self-worth, and it just swallowed me. I felt like it really was the straw that broke the camel's back. We just had some really hard things happen, and I'll never forget like coming back from New York knowing I've got to burn it all down, and I don't know how to change. I don't know what that looks like. I remember we met with you. We met with my pastor now is a guy named Mike Hayes, Britain Christian Church. Love this dude. He specifically asked that I not mention his name. Mike Hayes.
And you guys know how much I love Mike.
Mike is amazing. Between the two of you, I felt like y'all both kind of put me back on a path. And I'll never forget sitting down with Mike and kind of telling him the story of everything that we were dealing with. And at that point, I was still pointing the finger at her. And he kind of leans back in his chair and he's like, hey, I think you're probably focusing on the wrong person. And I was like, Mike, clearly you didn't hear the story. Let me tell you again. And he sits back in his chair. Andy, I think you're probably focused on the wrong person. And then over, a few weeks, I just felt more and more broken. More and more things in my life were surfacing of like, I hate this side of me. I hate this part of me. I wish I could do this different. And the Holy Spirit prompted me. I got out a yellow piece of paper one night, one of those legal pads, and 2 pages of all the sin in my life, all of the stuff that I felt like I needed to confess, all the little broken, nasty pieces to myself, that the gaslighting, all the things that I was just ashamed of. And I went and met with Pastor Mike. I read him every line of it. And I was going to go read it to Sarah. I was going to read it to our small group. I was going to read it to my family. I was like so excited to like, this is who I am. Everybody thinks this, but I am a broken person. And Mike, he basically said, hey, you're going to go home. You're going to burn that piece of paper and you're going to start rebuilding your life. And, he and I started meeting once a week. We still do 2.5 years later. We meet once a week. And his comments to me were, you need to meditate and delight on the word of God to change the trajectory of your life. And I'll never forget being like, how do you delight in the word of God? You ever read Exodus? I mean, that's a beatdown. And yeah. I couldn't understand. I've raised a Christian my whole life. And I would read my Bible, but I didn't delight in it. And I couldn't figure out how to delight in it. And so he and I started in Psalms 119 and worked our way through Psalms 119. And now I think today we're in James. I mean, and just gradually working our way through the Bible. And I'll never forget, and one of the other things I've done is I know who I am deep down. And if I miss 2 days of time in the Word in the morning, I will revert back to who I was before I started meeting with you and Mike. And so I've just had to commit, almost like an alcoholic. You know, mine is a pride journey, and there's a bunch of journeys in there, but I have to have time in the Word with the Lord every morning, or I will find myself right back where I was.
Yeah.
And one morning I was in Isaiah. I don't remember the exact verse, but basically it was saying that God doesn't want from us our offerings, our burnt offerings. He wants from us a broken and contrite spirit. And it was a life-changing deal for me. And I always thought that she wanted this life that we had before, with friends and success and leadership. And what she wanted was a broken and contrite spirit in me. And that's what the Lord wanted in me. He didn't care about all my success. He wanted me broken at the foot of the cross. And what that looks like in our marriage, and I believe this is kind of what has helped us so much, is me being willing to say, hey, I'm really sorry. I screwed that up. I should have thought more before I did that. Will you forgive me? I never said stuff like that. Very rarely in that season of life where I felt like I had lost my way. And coming back to being approachable, being humble, being willing to say sorry, being willing to acknowledge and admit, I didn't do that well. I should have been more thoughtful in the way I interacted with that person. And I feel like that was how it really started to change. And one of the things that you said to us early on is you said, Andy, I think you need to reframe the way you see your wife. And I heard you, but I didn't implement it. And what's amazing is kind of after the dam broke and I started finding myself in the Word and the Holy Spirit working in my life, your words kind of just kept coming back to me. Reframe, reframe, reframe. And I used to, in that short season of unhealthiness, you know, me and all my friends, we would sit by the fire till midnight hanging out. And Sarah would get up and she would go in at 9. And I would be so mad at her. Like, why didn't you hang out by the fire and hang out with us all and talk and have fun? And she was going inside to tuck our kids in bed, to say prayers with the kids and do Bible studies with the kids. And she was prioritizing the things that really mattered. And yet in my silliness, I was framing her as, you know, no fun Sarah, when in reality, she's this perfect person, not perfect, but close, and taking care of and nurturing our children. And I always wanted to, like, hey, everybody's playing tennis. Come play tennis. All these, you know, tennis. We're all playing tennis. And she wasn't playing tennis because she's going to Ministries of Jesus and seeing free patients who don't have insurance. And yet I would be frustrated, like, nah, come. And so it was easy to start reframing the gift that she was versus who I saw her as before. Yeah. And so I really appreciate the way you pushed us on those fronts.
As you're listening to today's episode, you might have questions about blame, gaslighting, and how they affect a marriage. We typically get a lot of questions about those topics because they are really confusing and tricky to deal with. And so if you have questions, Dr. Kim loves answering your questions. We always love to hear from you. So we've got a place in today's show notes where you can submit a question anonymously. We also have a spot on Instagram where we'll be asking for your questions. You are always welcome to DM us there on Instagram or on the post where we're asking for your questions. So you can find us on Instagram at awesome_marriage, or again, by going to the link in today's show notes. Don't hesitate to reach out with any questions because we'd love to help in any way we can with this topic.
Are you ready to communicate better in your marriage? Communication is the number one issue that couples ask for help with. Learning to communicate effectively as a couple will reduce unnecessary arguments, decrease stress in the home, and strengthen your bond as a couple. Growing in communication will not only provide your marriage with more peace, but it will deepen your friendship and intimacy with one another. That's why we've created a 6-week challenge that will help you learn to communicate more effectively in your marriage. The 30-day communication challenge resource is a 27-page PDF that includes 5 challenges every week for 6 weeks. Topics covered are daily touch points and small communication, nonverbal communication, looking back at past communication, emotions, communication breakdowns, and connection building. You can get our 30-day communication challenge resource with any donation made to the Ministry of Awesome Marriage at the link to the specific giving page in our show notes. Whatever you can give helps the ministry happen and gets you this great resource. So click on over there to grab this resource, or you can always find our resources at awesomemarriage.com by clicking the drop down on our resource tab and selecting Marriage Resources. Once you donate, you'll be emailed the PDF immediately in your receipt email. Your financial gift furthers the mission of helping couples build awesome marriages. And remember, when you save a marriage, you don't just save a couple, you save a family. This resource is our way of saying thank you for helping save families and strengthening marriages.
New York was such a turning point for you guys. What you went through on that trip that was so hard.
That trip was like a celebration trip of the very difficult closing that Andy made on this hotel. Nobody thought it was going to happen. He was able to get it done. So it was this big celebration. We invited all these friends, all these couples, and it was going to be this night where everybody gets all dolled up. And I had decided in my head that I had to be this perfect wife for him that night. I needed to look the part and be the part. And I had put so much pressure on myself and felt like he wanted me to be so much fun. I just felt totally stressed about it. I was nervous. I was anxious. And we got there that night and I just had almost like a full-blown panic attack because it all just surfaced. And I thought, I can't do this. Like, this isn't who we are. This isn't who I married. Like, just all of the getting all dolled up and toasting and celebrating when I felt like our marriage was in the pits. It didn't feel like a time to be celebrating. And I felt like a total fake to be putting on a nice dress and smiling and taking pictures at a moment like that. And he was just kind of continuing to go about his thing and have fun and do all this. He was working so much when he wasn't having fun. And I just kind of exploded at him. I verbally just, we got into a really bad argument and a lot of things were said that we try to never use the word divorce. Like, that's like something we don't do. And we started just using language that we shouldn't use, that we never use with each other. And I think that's whenever we realized, I mean, we knew it was really bad, but it was like we couldn't even have fun at an event that should be fun because things were really not well.
There wasn't anything to celebrate from your perspective.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
She knew who I really was. She knew it. He's not who all these people think.
Because you did. You wrote so fast, and you were voted some big honor in New York for developers or something, all that kind of stuff. And I've seen other guys that rise quickly, successful, maybe not to the level you were, but if someone was listening to this and they're kind of on that track, what would you say to them?
Get off of it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, looking back, because we talked about this, like, how did we get here? We had this awesome community. We had this awesome small group. We were going to church. Like, we were doing everything.
Kind of checking all the boxes.
Yeah, we were doing all the things that you should be doing to have a really great marriage. And yet somehow we got off course. And I think looking back, there were a few things that happened. And I think misprioritizing was a big one. Like, for Andy, both of us, our priorities had always been God, marriage, and then kids, and then, friends, family, and everything after that. And I think his priorities had become having fun and climbing that career ladder. And I think God had moved down. And I think our marriage was the last thing on his list. Like everything else came before that. And for me, I had misaligned my priorities to where God was first for a long time and then Andy. And I think I was starting to move Andy ahead of God. What he said about me and what he thought about me was challenging my joy from day to day. And so both of us had misaligned. So I would say the first thing is like, you have to keep your priorities God and then marriage and then your kids and on down. And the only way to do that is by seeking the Lord first, and having people in your life that hold you accountable. And we had both always had that. And like he was talking about, like he lost that through a lot of, just a lot of mishap in the process. And so when you lose your accountability and you lose your, like we had left our church and we were kind of looking at different churches at the time. So we didn't have a home base for church for a while. We didn't have accountability. Our priorities were misaligned. Like that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say like to the guys that are on the same trajectory that I was on, it's not worth it. There's nothing wrong. Business is a wonderful thing. It's fun, but it can become an idol. And you can lose track of what's important. And I think one of the negatives of a lot of success is you don't really know who's really your friend and who wants access to your next deal or,
Sure.
who you are in the community. And you, if you're not careful, you get surrounded. And my buddies weren't like this, but you can get a bunch of people around you who don't push you to be who you want to be.
Well, to that point, like having discernment about the people that are in your inner circle, right? So it's like the Harvard study, you become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so who you're spending the most time with should be sought by prayer and thoughtful consideration, not just who is the most fun or who can help me close this deal or whatever priority that isn't. No, who is going to make me most like Christ? Who's going to push me most towards Christ and push me to love my spouse really well?
Coming back to like prioritizing friendships and people who you have nothing to gain from. Prioritizing tucking my kids in bed every single night, being available to read with them, being available to like, hey, I saw that happen at school. I'm sure that hurt your feelings. Do you want to talk about it? Being available. Like our life has been hard since I kind of burned it all down and decided I wanted to prioritize Sarah and the kids. It's been messy. It's been hard. But it is the best decision we've ever made times a billion.
Is there any more with that process of when you made the decision, I've got to do something different? You talked about talking to Mike, coming to counseling, stuff like that. But it was a process, right?
Yeah. For us though, it was pretty immediate. About 2 months, 3 months of like, from the time I showed up at Mike's office until, real substantive, sizable change had occurred in my life. And I think it was, I bucked at first of like, no, it can't be me. It still has to be her. You hang on to that pride and,
Well, it reminds me of that verse, like the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. The beautiful thing that happened in New York when like the Holy Spirit came to Andy is for the first time he was like, I think I could be part of the problem here.
Yeah.
And it was just like him starting to say like, maybe I need to do some things differently. And I could see him kind of like oscillating back and forth between wanting to have fun or wanting this life that he had, but no, God's really calling me back over here. And he did that oscillation for probably 4 months. And then we had like the big blow up fight, and then he was done. And he was just like, I'm done. I'm this is not who I am. This is not where my roots taught me to be. And he just started seeking the Lord. And I think initially he, like he said, he didn't delight in the word, but over time I've watched him, and he'll go, guys, listen to this verse. And we sit down at the dinner table and they're like, kids, listen to this verse. Let me tell you what God's teaching me about this verse. And like last night, Belle was like, Dad, you sound like a preacher. And I just love it because like our kids are seeing a father who is now not only delighting in the word, but he's passionate and he wants to share what he's learning in the word. And he's excited to get up early and spend that time with God. And just the 180 I've seen in his life. And he talks about like, you know, life is still hard. It's not like everything's perfect. We have new challenges with parenting and other things. And when you decide to burn down the things of this world, there's collateral damage and you have some loss, but we would never go back to that old life. What we have now and the beauty of where our marriage is now, it's so much better than where it was with all the glitter.
Yeah. As all this was going on, then what did you struggle with? What was hardest for you during that time?
Well, I think I struggled with not just the anxiety of my identity, but also I remember just prayer journaling, like, how long, oh Lord, and struggling with like, what does the future look like? Like, what is the path moving forward, and working through God is good, even when my circumstance isn't good. God is still good, and trusting God and praying and having dear friends pray for me and not seeing anything change. In fact, seeing things get worse for a period of time, but continuing to seek the Lord and continuing to trust God. That was something I had to work through.
At the time when Andy was getting all those accolades, everybody's telling him he's the greatest guy in the world. Who did you go to? Did you have anyone that...
You.
Okay, there weren't a lot of people.
So I felt really protective of Andy because I knew who he was. I knew this was not him. Like, I just kept thinking he was going to snap out of it. I was like, this is not my husband. This is not the man I was married to for 15 years. And so I was protective, and I didn't want to just go around talking about like what he was struggling with. And so it was so helpful to meet with you because I knew I had a safe place. I knew it wasn't gossip. I knew I could be heard and be seen. Now that shifted a little bit after we had, you know, our really big fight in New York for all to see. One of my very, very best friends, who is still just an amazing friend, Kristen, she and her husband, like, they saw us at our absolute worst. They were there. They saw it all firsthand, and they weren't scared of the mess. They weren't afraid of my anxiety and my, just my need for Andy at that time. And they weren't scared of Andy and his flaws. And they walked alongside of us, constantly checking in, constantly praying for us. They would sit with us and watch us have an hour argument about something. And they would just listen and say, can we just pray for you guys? We don't have answers, but we just want you to know we love you and we pray for you. And we had 2 different families that did that for us. And that was just a godsend. It was just such a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had some really good friends. They've been our friends for 20 plus years. And those were the people who like showed up in the mess and like, we're here. Mm-hmm. And it's okay that it's messy and it's hard right now. And coming back to you, Dr. Kim, I hated coming to your office. It was in the middle of my work day. I was busy, and I was convinced you couldn't clearly see that Sara was the problem. And I was so frustrated. And I kept thinking, like, I can convince Dr. Kim. If I can just, like, if he'll just listen to me, we'll get this straightened out. And you did such an amazing job of loving me and being kind to me, even when I wasn't worthy of that love and kindness. And you kept kindly pushing me back to like, hey, we can do better. We can do better. We're going to fix this. We can do better. And I just want to encourage whoever's listening to this and maybe they're in a similar spot, counseling someone like Dr. Kim, someone like Pastor Mike, that they're willing to put their finger in your chest and speak up and say, hey, you focus on the wrong person.
And Dr. Kim,
matters.
You did such a good job too, because Andy wasn't ready for that when we first started coming.
No.
And you knew that about him. And you would just ask questions. You weren't like...
Oh, I hated all those questions.
You would just ask questions, and Andy would like leave pondering. And it was just helpful. And
I just remember one of the early sessions, and I've told you that before, but we were getting up and walking out, and Andy goes, "This was not fun today." And I'm thinking in my mind, no, it wasn't.
It wasn't fun, that's for sure. But, one of the things that the Lord has taught me, my tagline used to be light and fun. I wanted everything in my life. I wanted my wife to be light and fun. I wanted my friends light and fun. Chill out. The world is hard enough. Be cool. And what I've realized is light and fun is a facade. And in the hard, in the difficulty of life is when the Lord shows up.
Yeah.
In the struggle, in the suffering, we've suffered a lot. And in the suffering is whenever I find myself like wholly dependent on God. And it's something that I can't solve. Your reputation or a rumor floating around or something that's going on in your community.
Right.
And in that suffering, you can only find your peace in the Lord. And that's where God wants us. And that's not something a man in power or with money can fix. And so I think suffering is such a gift if you don't waste it. Lean into your suffering. Lean into the hardship, seek godly counsel, find your Pastor Kim, your Pastor Mike, your Dr. Kim.
And if you have those friends that they're constantly pointing you towards the Lord.
Yeah.
Like I remember sitting down with my friend Lydia and just sharing. She knew all the details of everything going on. She was one of those people that I shared everything with. And she had known Andy almost as long as we'd been married. And she would hear the awfulest things that I could just tell her. And she would say, I know Andy, and I know this isn't him, and he's going to come back around because he loves the Lord. And I believe that. I believe that he is going to hear the Lord. And she saw like such beauty in Andy when I couldn't. And that helped me whenever I felt a little hopeless and whenever I felt like that anxiety was taking over. She would carry that burden with me.
That's pretty cool. And I think that God puts people in our lives like that. And what you said, I love what you said about suffering too, Andy, because, I've always wanted, couldn't you just do it an easier way, God? But I think He's there with us in the suffering. And I think when I finally realized that, and see that it does have a purpose. And Him with us will make us stronger and strengthen our relationship with Him. And just the way we're wired, that's kind of the way things go.
2 years ago, one of the songs I loved was Mercy Me's Bring the Rain.
Yeah.
And bring me joy, bring me peace. But if what I need is the rain, Jesus, bring the rain. And I always sang that song. And I really thought, like, Lord, I want the rain. And then God brings you a hurricane, and you're like, I was really talking about a very quick light mist, and then I needed to move on. But God, for a personality like mine, that He knows my propensity to revert back to that self, He knew I needed a sizable amount of rain, a hardship, things that I could not fix, relationships that were broken that I couldn't move the chess pieces around to fix them. And in that, you find yourself, Mike says, your face is shoved into the cross, and you get splinters in your cheek, and you're miserable and it hurts, but you look up and you're staring right at the cross.
That's so good.
Well, and now, like, if I have a bad day, if I have, an anxious day, Andy can come alongside me and say, I love you. I'm sorry you're having a rough day. What can I do for you today? I mean, it's just amazing the difference that I see in him today and who he is. And
to appreciate that, what I used to do for all the listeners is I used to say, hey, come on. Why are you crying?
Well,
get up. Let's go. And I was not empathetic and I wasn't kind. That's who that person is if I'm not careful.
Sure.
And so now I try, and there's still some times where I'm like in the back of my mind, like, come on.
Yeah.
But you come up, you put your arm around her. Hey, I love you. I'm so sorry that you're feeling this. How can I walk this?
To that point, Pastor Mike, I actually talked to him yesterday about just some hurt that I was feeling completely unrelated to marriage. And Pastor Mike was helping me reframe, and he was saying, man, but don't you see how different your marriage is from where would you ever go back? He said, 2 years ago, Andy would have said, toughen up, Buttercup. And he said, now he's out fighting on your behalf. And he said, that is the difference that I see in him. So
good.
It's just great. And I think I would just want to encourage anyone who's going through a really hard time in their marriage and they're looking and saying, like, I don't see this getting better. I don't see a way out. God's timing is never our timing. And that's hard. But that's where we have to trust that God will give us what we need to get to where we are. And when we get on the other side of it, I would tell you, like, our marriage is better than it's ever been. And praise be to God for that.
Absolutely.
Don't waste your sufferings. I've met with a bunch of dudes. A lot of guys reach out and they want to talk business, or they want me to help them with some company they're going to start, and inevitably the conversation will come around to their marriage, and a few times they're in similar seasons, and it's fun to, like, say, hey, I think you're focused on the wrong person. And
yes,
like, encouraging them to come see you, to go see Pastor Mike, of like, if you'll focus solely on you and fixing yourself and owning your own issues and stop worrying about other people, stop worrying about your wife, your friends, or your business partner, whoever it is, and you solely deal with your own junk, I bet your life will, like, radically change. And that for me is like not wasting my suffering.
No.
And I'm still suffering. And it's not the prosperity gospel, because since these last 2 years, there's been hardship, lots of hardship.
Sure.
But to what Sarah said, the things that matter most, my relationship with the Lord, my relationship with my wife, my kids, it's all where it should be. Yeah. And I can deal with the storms of life if I have that correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what Jesus says, in this world you'll have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world, and he has. Mm-hmm. And we just have to invite him to, in the midst of our struggles, in the midst of our pain, and let him walk us through it. Mm-hmm. And I think what you're saying, Andy, is the redemption. I mean, how God is allowing you, now you can pour it into people that were where you were.
Yes.
And the platform God gives you now of how people look at you, they come to you, and you've got a opportunity there to help impact their lives and their marriages, and that's pretty cool.
Yes.
Yeah, but to not put a bow on it, just below the surface is still that guy.
Yep.
And that's why I told Mike, I will meet with you for the rest of my life every week. And at 6:30 in the morning, I want to be on the couch in the Word, because there isn't a bow of like, and now I'm fixed and everything is great and everybody come meet with me and I'm going to tell you how to live a perfect marriage. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
For me, I am broken. I still have, me more than others. I still have a very broken spirit that I recognize is like waiting to grab me by the Achilles if I get one little bit off step. And so it's daily coming back to it. That's kind of why I like the accountability of this podcast is if I end up back in that spot 2 years from now, everybody here's got permission to slap me around.
I have 60,000 people at your door.
Yeah.
No, I think that's so true. And we all are. I mean, it just like Sara was saying, I mean, we're all just one bad mistake or bad decision away. And I think it's, if we're not consistent in the word, in our relationship with God, of hugging and saying, can I help you, as opposed to what's wrong with you? Yeah, we can all get back there. And I think the fact that you have been so diligent in doing the things that have made a difference, and it's not a checkbox anymore for you. It's a lifestyle. That's right. What I see in you. When I saw you come in today, your countenance is different. There's a joy in your face that there's a lot of times I didn't see that joy in your face, you know? And it's what God can do when we allow Him to do it. Mm-hmm. So, part of the last question, what do you enjoy most about each other in your marriage now?
You go first.
I love to swim. That's one of my ways I like to exercise. And one day, Andy was he plays volleyball with a bunch of buddies on Friday mornings, and it got canceled last minute. Several guys couldn't make it. And I said, you can just come to the pool with me and swim. And Andy came to the pool and got in the pool and swam with me. And that is the antonym of the type of exercise he likes. He likes social group exercise where you're keeping a score and there's a clear winner and it's usually him. Right. And like face down in the pool, no conversation, no music. We can't even talk to each other because we're both face down.
Well, and Sara swims like an Olympian and I drown the whole time. I mean, she just
kind of glides through the water.
I'm halfway down my first lap and I'm literally like drowning and just hating every second of it.
But he just said yes.
But you were there.
And he could have said, oh, I probably just need to get to the office and catch up on some extra meetings since that got canceled. Or, no, I'm not a good swimmer. He just showed up and he got in the pool and he swam and took a lot of breaks and was okay with that. And I felt so loved because he just did something that was totally uninteresting to him.
Yeah.
Because I asked him to.
Before you go throw me a parade, I only did it once. So.
I think I'll get him back in the pool again.
Had a lot of impact.
But it's a tip of an iceberg. It's like a reflection of who he is to me now. Like, hey, honey, it's important that I wash the cabinets before I go to bed. He'll wash the cabinet, or countertops. It's like these little things that he makes important to him because he knows they're important to me.
Yeah.
And it just makes me feel known and seen and loved and pursued. I think that's my favorite thing about him right now.
What about you, Andy?
I think my favorite thing about Sara is all the stuff in our lives that is not light and fun right now. It's the parenting struggles. It's the friends struggles. It's all the things in life that are messy and difficult, but knowing that we're aligned, that we're shoulder to shoulder instead of like fronting off and conflict with she and I. It's she and I on our knees in the living room praying for discernment. Lord, help us to understand, how do we navigate this? How do we be kind and honoring to these people, show Christ, and keep our mouths shut? How do we shepherd our children to the foot of the cross? Even when it's really hard and some of them are struggling or I think it's the messiness of life. Mm-hmm. When you've got a partner that you believe in and knowing that they now again believe in you and they have forgiven you for all of the mess and they know you. She knows me. She knows all the nooks and crannies and the ways that I stumble. And she loves me in spite of that. And she graciously pulls me back with kindness and empathy, but also at times like a, come on, let's go. Mm-hmm. That's not who you want to be. You were gossipy tonight. The way that you told that story was not honoring. You shouldn't have shared that. Holding me to be who she knows I want to be.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And the fact that you value her, what she says, you hear her, you listen to her, and you're not telling her something else. You're not gaslighting her. You're not saying, well,
Get
you're
your
wrong.
crap together.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Anything else we didn't cover that you guys wanted to talk about?
So we have made a weekly lunch date a priority. So our kids are at a stage where once the school bell rings, there's so much shuffling that has to go around that it's difficult. Even if we could get childcare, it's difficult for us to be relaxed and in the moment because we know our kids need us. So we have made a lunch date every Wednesday, and it is so delightful. We usually will do, we'll have lunch and then go on a walk together or something. So we try to do eat and then something kind of active. And it is something we both really, really look forward to. Yeah. And it's just that friendship that we are regularly fostering. And our 19-year anniversary is coming up.
That's exciting.
We're going to go to dinner, and I have a little surprise planned that I know it's little, but it's going to be fun. He's going to love it. We're just excited, and it's fun to foster rhythms of friendship with each other throughout the regular mundane work week.
That's so good. That's what marriage was designed to do. Mm-hmm. Two people who walk through life together with God at the center. We never get it perfect, any of us. But if that continues to be our goal, it makes every day better.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you guys for spending time.
Thank
Love you guys.
You know, Dr. Kim, in thinking about how our marriage lasts for years and decades and really a lifetime, Andy and I are both big believers that a faith-based community is absolutely vital to helping our marriage become all that God wants it to be. I am so thankful for all the friends and family that we have had in our lives to help point us back to Jesus. Our friends, the Brodines, who we've known them for about 18 years, and the Mans Shreks. And, I'm really blessed to have an older sister who has prayed for me and encouraged me, and I think she has every vital verse of the Bible memorized. She has always been such a great resource for me. I can just be super vulnerable with her, and it never shocks her. It never disappoints her. She can just say, that is not from the Lord. I rebuke that. And then follow it up with this beautiful verse that she just has hidden in her heart. Even family that is far away, my sister-in-law, Kristen, in Oregon, has always been someone I can talk to, and she can encourage me and have me laughing before we get off the phone. I'm just such a big believer in surrounding yourself with a community of believers that they're not just good friends, but they're people that aren't afraid of the mess. They're not afraid of the hurts. And when you have a burden to carry, they are willing to take part of the load. And I think when you're really down and you're hurting, you need those people in your lives to help you carry the burden. I love that verse in Ecclesiastes where it says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Someone's listening and they think, man, I don't have someone like that in my life. I would just encourage prayer. God, I just pray you would bring me godly friendship, bring me accountability, bring me that friend that I can count on that will lift me up when I have fallen. And not to discount parents either. Andy and I are both so blessed to have amazing parents. And my dad is someone I can call anytime, and he will just stop and encourage me and pray for me. And my mom has just been so faithful over the years. And Andy's parents are equally amazing. So we've been blessed in that regard. And I know not everyone has that, but again, I think that's where you can be praying for those people, for God to bring those people into your life to encourage you and walk alongside you. We still have to keep our priorities aligned, meaning God first, then our marriage, then our kids and our parents and our extended friends and family. So it's not to say that our Christian community is to replace our time in the Word or our time in prayer. That still needs to be at the top of our priority list. And ultimately, as great as Christian community and friendship and a spouse can be, our ultimate best friend is going to always be Jesus. Jesus will never leave us or forsake us. And that is the one we can always count on.
Thanks for listening to the Awesome Marriage Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Ministry of Awesome Marriage and produced by Lindsay Few with music by Noah Copeland. If you haven't signed up for Dr. Kim's weekly Marriage Multiplier email, we encourage you to do so today. Marriage is hard and life is busy, which is why we need real, practical reminders of ways to build an awesome marriage. Sign up today to get this quick and compelling email from Dr. Kim each week. If you enjoyed this content, share the podcast with a friend.